Hi, everyone. We're going to continue the Cyclops. Where we left off was that Odysseus was trapped inside of the cave, and the Cyclops had closed the door, and night fell, and they were stuck. Odysseus wants to kill Polyphemus the Cyclops, but he knows that if he does, then he's doomed. He and his men are trapped, so there's no use. Well, we begin now with a beautiful bit of figurative language, and this is personification. The sun is rising, and it says, when the young dawn with fingertips of rose lit up the world, the Cyclops woke up, and he lit his fire, and he milked his handsome ewes all in due order, putting the sucklings to the mothers. That means he's very good with taking care of these sheep. But then, his chores being all done, dispatched, he caught another brace of men, two more men, to make his breakfast. And then he whisked away the great door slab, to let his sheep go through. But he, behind, he reset the stone as one would cap a quiver. So he's trapping Odysseus and the remaining men, right? And now a quiver is a container that you hold your arrows in. It's a case, it's a long tube, and you can put a cap on it. So that's basically what Polyphemus is doing. They're trapped. There was a din, that means a loud noise of whistling, as the Cyclops rounded his flocks to higher ground, but then stillness. So his big, loud stomping, and he takes off, and he takes his sheep to pasture. But now I wondered how to hurt him worst, if but Athena granted what I prayed for. Here are the means I thought would serve my turn. So he's coming up with a plan how he can hurt the Cyclops. A club or a staff lay there along the fold, so a very long pole of wood. An olive tree felled and left to season, so it's left to kind of get old so you can burn it in a fire, for Cyclops' hand. And it was like a mast, a lugger of 20 oars, broad in the beam, a deep sea-going craft might carry. So this is a huge chunk of wood, and so long, so big around it seemed. Now I chopped out a 6-foot section of this pole, and I set it down before my men, who scraped it. And when they had it smooth, I hewed again to make a stake with a pointed end. So he's making a very enormous, sharp lance. I held this in the fire's heart, and I turned it, toughening it. So he's burning the end of it, right? You can all imagine that would harden it. And then I hid it well back in the cavern under one of the dung piles in profusion there. So there's a lot of goat poop back there. And now came the time to toss for it. That means we're going to kind of toss a coin and decide who's going to do the throwing of this lance at the Cyclops, right? This enormous lance. Hmm. Who would do it? Who ventured along with me? Whose hand could bear to thrust and grind that spike in the Cyclops's eyes when mild sleep had mastered him? So his plan is that while the Cyclops is asleep, they're going to take that wooden stake and they're going to drive it into the eye, right? As luck would have it, the men I would have chosen won the toss. 4 strong men, and I made 5 as captain. At evening came the shepherd and his flock. So here comes Polyphemus and his woolly flock. The rams as well this time. So he's bringing the boy sheep in. Entered the cave by some sheep herding whim. So this is important. The boy sheep are inside of the cave now. Don't forget this detail. This is an important detail. Or by a god's bidding. So Odysseus says, I don't know if it was by luck or a god made this happen, but none of the boy sheep were left outside. And then he hefted his great boulder into place. And before I continue, let's think about this. 12 men were selected, right? We had 12. Then he ate 2, so that brings us down to 10 men. Then he ate 2 more, and that brings us down to 8 men. There are 8 men and Odysseus left in the cave. And it says, at evening time, the shepherd with his woolly flock, the rams as well this time, entered the cave by some sheep herding whim or a god's bidding. but none were left outside. He hefted his great boulder into place, and he sat down to milk the bleating ewes in proper order and put the lambs to suck. Now, I've always thought this part would be kind of funny because how big would the sheep be for him to have to, you know, milk them, right? The goats and the sheep. Oh, how would you do this? Okay, so and he swiftly ran through all of his evening chores, and then he caught two more men and feasted on them. So now we're down to six guys, right? My moment was at hand, and I went forward holding an ivy bowl of my dark drink. You guys remember the alcohol that Odysseus has with him? And looking up, saying, he says, Cyclops, try some wine. Here's a liquor to wash down your scraps of men. Taste it and see what kind of drink we carried under our planks. I meant it for an offering if you would help us home, but you're mad, you're crazy, unbearable, a bloody monster. After this, will any traveler come to see you? But then he seized and he drained the bowl, gulp, and it all went down so fiery and so smooth. He called for more. Give me another drink, thank you kindly. Nah. Tell me, how are you called? I'll make a gift will please you. Even Cyclops know the wine grapes grow out of grassland and loam in heaven's rain. But here's a bit of nectar and ambrosia. 3 bowls I brought him, and he poured them down. So he's drinking up all of this alcohol. I saw the fuddle and flush come over him. So the Cyclops is starting to look a little drowsy, right? Red in the face. He's been drinking. And then I sang out in cordial tones, and I said, Cyclops, you ask my honorable name? Remember the gift you promised me, and I shall tell you. My name is Nobody. Mother, father, and friends, everyone calls me Nobody. And he said, Nobody's my meat then. After I eat his friends, others come first. There's a noble gift now. So here's your gift. I'll just eat you in the very last, right? Even as he spoke, he reeled and he tumbled backward, his great head lolling off to one side, and sleep took him like any creature. Drunk, hiccuping, he dribbled streams of liquor and bits of men. Can you imagine that out of his mouth? And now, by the gods, I drove my big hand spike deep into the embers. So he takes it over to the fire and he's turning it, and making it all charred up again, and cheered my men along with battle talk now to keep their courage up. No quitting now. The pike of olive, this tree, green though it had been, it reddened and it glowed as if about to catch. That means it's about to catch on fire. I drew it from the coals, and my 4 fellows gave me a hand, and lugging it near the Cyclops, as more than natural force nerved them, straight forward they sprinted, lifted it, and rammed it deep in his crater eye, and leaned on it, turning it as a shipwright turns a drill in planking, having men below to swing the 2-handled strap that spins it in the groove. So, with our brand, we bored that great eye socket while blood ran out around the red hot bar. Eyelid and eyelash were scarred. The pierced ball, it hissed, broiling, and the roots popped. Now, we've got to go back just a moment and look at one section. This is absolutely beautiful. This would be an epic simile. When we make a comparison using like or as, we see that he is comparing his taking a large chunk of wood and driving it into the Cyclops eye and turning it just like it would be if you were on board a ship and you were below deck and you had a large like a turning wheel, and you would turn that and spin it in the groove. He says, just like that, we bored or ground, made a hole in the great eye socket while the blood ran out and it was red hot and it's sizzling and popping and all that. And here we have another great comparison. This is one of my favorites. It's a little grotesque though. In a smithy, right? We know a blacksmith shop. One sees a white hot axe head or an adze plunged and wrung in a cold tub. Psh, right? Screeching steam, the way they make soft iron hale and hard. We all know how it works in a blacksmith shop, right? You get the metal really, really hot and then you plunge it in the water, psh, and that hardens it, right? He says, just like that, just so, that eyeball hissed around the spike. Psst, the Cyclops bellowed, "Oh!" And the rock roared around him, and we fell back in fear. Clawing his face, he tugged the bloody spike out of his eye and he threw it away. And his wild hands went groping because he's completely blind now, right? Now he's reaching around in the cave for Odysseus and the men. And then he set up a howl for Cyclops, who lived in caves on windy peaks nearby.